Ronnie, it wouldn't be a proper Get Informed America if we didn't talk some politics. Also going on this week was the Amy Coney Barrett confirmation hearings. And it seems to be so far smooth sailing for the
Yeah.
justice or soon to be justice. As it came out, I believe this morning, that they plan on voting on October 22nd. So next Thursday, she will be confirmed, barring any strange developments that happen. One of the more humorous or curious things that happened this week is something that you wrote about on informedamerican.com. Supreme Court nominee uses preference instead of orientation. So Webster's redefines the term as offensive. Now, this refers to the statement here was regarding sort of gay, lesbian, that sexual preference, that sort of thing. That was the term she used. And the quote here was, "I have never discriminated on the basis of sexual preference and would not discriminate on the basis of sexual preference." Now, that seems to be an indication, or at least a clear statement, that she does not and will not discriminate. But yet, Senator Hirono from Hawaii, always good to get a little dig in, said that's offensive. And then the internet, Rodney, rallied to this offensive charge, even to the point where it's now changed in the dictionary. Wow, it's amazing how fast the culture will move, Rodney.
It is. And it was interesting because, Spartacus, otherwise known as Senator Cory Booker, got in on the act as well and said this was offensive for her to use preference instead of orientation because it implies that it's a choice, blah, blah, blah. Well, the word preference in the dictionary, one of the definitions, the Merriam-Webster online dictionary, one of the definitions was orientation, and it was then, semicolon C, sexual orientation. And so they had it right there. And it was on October 13, it was the day after she said this, that they did change it. And so that information is out there. They were clearly pandering to this. Well, Joe Biden used this term back in May, and a lot of people use the term. It's not an offensive term. It's a term, right? But people can choose to be upset about things. I take this as an incredible sign that the senatorial hearings on this were so calm about this. They were looking for something to be upset with her about. They were not going to go after her Catholicism, which was the big thing people were talking about leading up to this. And I think it's because the Kavanaugh hearings turned out so badly. I mean, it made them look terrible. And so they couldn't go down that road again and attack like they did, particularly attacking a woman. And so they did not. And so they kind of stuck to their talking points. They did bring up issues, whether you think they are rightly concerned about them or just showboating, it doesn't matter. They brought up concerns that I think a lot of Americans, some percentage of Americans would say, hey, I want to hear about that. Yeah. And Barrett gave the exact non-committal response that every nominee since Bork has given, which is, I can't talk about anything that might come before the court. And they're like, well, what do you think? I can't talk. And so that's become their job, is to disavow any thought they might have ever had in the history of their life on legal things, which they've spent their entire life studying. And it's silly the way we do this, but I think it was much more cordial this time around because of Kavanaugh. And it's remarkable that it has gone through this. And the only thing we have is this one preference versus orientation thing.
Yeah. And by the way, I do also, just to tack on, so just to prove your point, certainly here's a quote tweet from the Advocate mag, and to come from history to be able now as a director to be telling this is quoting a story about young people who are just comfortable with who they are no matter what their sexual preference is. It's just glorious and so satisfying. I mean, no problem there. But that was Rodney, that was a long time ago. That was back on September 25th of this year.
Well, and the Advocate magazine being a magazine geared toward that community.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah. As I said, the terms have been interchangeable for a long time. For them to, feign some, incredible offense at this tells you there's really not a lot going on.
Now, I could try to untangle this preference logical Rubik's Cube, but I'm not going to go down there. I'll leave it all for you to decide on your own if this makes sense or not. But back to the Kavanaugh thing, yeah, it was an absolute disaster. And I remember before these hearings, Rodney, I asked you if the senators were going to ask Amy Coney Barrett if she ever engaged in a devil's triangle or was a gang rapist or anything like that. Thankfully, you said no, and they didn't. Although Senator Hirono also asked her if she had ever sexually assaulted anybody. So I don't know, maybe that's just standard job practice now to ask.
Maybe
It's embarrassing.
I don't know.
Yes, I do agree. I think what came, it was truly a nothing burger, right? As much as they tried to do, there's really just nothing there, right? As much as if this is the worst that they got was a simple offensive statement, call it that, then she seems to have acquitted herself well. And it seems like President Trump picked the right woman, and it remains to be seen if voters are how they're going to look at this. Do you have any thought either way on this? And now that this battle is done, seemingly, and that she will be confirmed shortly before Election Day. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think voters are going to see it the way they did a week ago. I don't think this changes anything. The people who are upset that she's being confirmed so close to an election, a contested election in which Trump either could or could not get a second term, they're still going to be upset because that hasn't changed. It's not her; it's the process. And I think it's, kind of the flip side of what happened with Merrick Garland back in 2016, where people who were upset with the process are still upset with the process.
Yeah.
And so to that point, I just don't think this is going to change anybody's mind that she gets confirmed, because if you think the process is the problem, well, the process is gone. And if you agree with the process is gone. So.
What about maybe could this spur conservative enthusiasm for saying, wow, Trump got three of them in. This is great. I want more. Or on the other hand, Dem enthusiasm for, outrage over what they did before the election. Is it a wash?
I don't know that it's a wash. I just think it's water under the bridge.
Yeah.
But I think people who are unhappy with Trump and the things that he does, who find him outrageous, find this as one more outrageous behavior. And so it's a pattern confirming thing. And so to say, if somebody asked you, well, do you think Trump would, appoint a Supreme Court justice in the last 3 weeks of his presidency? Who would say no to that? Of course he would, right? I don't see how it does anything but continue a pattern that was already obvious. And so, like I said, I don't think this moves the needle at all in terms of either support or disagreement. That was already there.